Okay, so far we learned one way to graph linear functions. Now we're going to look at another way. We're going to do it by plotting the x and the y intercepts. So intercepts are points where the graph crosses the axes. More specifically, the x-intercept is where my graph crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. So in this case, it says plot 5, 0, and 0, 3. So starting with 5, 0. I start here, and I go, well, it's a positive 5, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 0. So I'm not going to go up or down. Then over here I have 0, 3. So I'm here at 0. I don't go left or right, but I'm going to go up 3. So in this case, this is going to be my line where those two connect. What is the ordered pair for the x-intercept? Which one tells me that it crosses the x-axis? At 5, 0. And how about the y? 0, 3. It is important to note that the x-intercept, y will always be 0. And for the y-intercept, x will always be 0. Because if you think about it, the x-intercept is always going to be on the x-axis, which means it's never going to be up or down, so it's always going to sit at 0. And then the opposite, but same, goes for the y-axis. So now, if we give you an equation, there's a way to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Well, in order to find the x-intercept, like we just said, we know that the x-intercept, y is always going to be equal to 0. So in order to find the x-intercept, plug in y equals 0. If you plug in 0 for y, that's going to tell you where your graph crosses the x-axis. And you probably guessed it, but the same is for when finding the y-intercept. You're going to plug in x equals 0. So go ahead and watch as we work through this. So number 1, find the intercepts in graph. Well, we have 2x minus 5y minus 10. So first, let's find the x-intercepts. Okay, in order to do that, I need to figure out where x is when y is 0, because remember, y is 0 anytime it crosses the x-axis. So we're going to plug in 0 for y. 2x minus 5 times 0 equals negative 10. And then we simplify. So we have 2x minus 0 equals negative 10. From here, you guys should know how to solve these equations because we just spent time solving one-step equations. All you have to do is divide by 2. So x equals negative 5. So the coordinate that we are going to be graphing is, remember the x value comes first, negative 5, comma, and what was the value that we plugged in? Was 0. Now we're going to do the same thing for the y-intercept. But remember, for the y-intercept, we're going to be plugging in 0 for x instead of y. Because if we're looking to see where it crosses the y-axis, our x is always going to be 0 at that point. Okay? It's not going to ever go left and right when it crosses the y-axis because it's always going to stay on the y-axis. So 2 times 0 minus 5y equals negative 10. Well, 2 times 0, we're just going to cancel that out. Negative 5y equals negative 10. Divide by negative 5. And y equals positive 2. Because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So the y-intercept for this graph is going to look Like, well, my x value, I plugged it in, is 0, and my y value that I spit out when I plugged it in was 2. So now I'm going to graph those points. -5, and then 0, so I don't move up and down, and then 0, 2. And that is going to be my line. And that is a way that we can graph our linear equations. So you're going to do the same thing for number 2. Let's go ahead and look at a different example. Let's go ahead and look at number 3. Number 3 is special because there are no x's. This is actually one graph where you're going to want to solve for y. If I solve for y, I get y equals 3, and we already know what y equals 3 looks like. So if you are ever left with something like x minus 5 equals 0, solve for the variable that is left, and at that point you should know how to graph it. Remember that y equals 3 is graphed, go to where y is 3, and then go the opposite direction. Let's go ahead and look at number 4 really quick before we wrap up. If you were to go ahead and do number 4, well, find the intercepts and graph. In order to find the intercepts, you plug in 0 for each of the variables. So let's start with the x-intercept. I'm going to go through this one a little bit quicker. 6x, remember you're plugging in 0 for the opposite one, and you get 6x equals 18, because that cancels, and divide by 6, x equals 3. So my first coordinate is going to be 3, 0. The second one, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. And I get -5y equals 18. Looks like I'm going to end up with a fraction here. And get y is equal to 3, -3 and 3/5. So we're just going to have to guesstimate there. So this point's going to be 0, -3 and 3/5. Again, all you are doing when finding the x-intercept, plug in 0 for y. When you're finding the y-intercept, plug in 0 for x. Now let's plot those points. 3, 0, 0, -3. We're just going to take a good guess about where that's going to end up, probably right here.